Welcome to Masters of Regeneration Radio. Conversations with humans who dare to reimagine our place on planet Earth. Earth is changing fast. Evolution happening in real time. An intimate, circular understanding of nature and living systems. We are the land. The land is us. Welcome everyone to the Masters of Regeneration podcast. This is Tomas Reyes. I want to remind everyone that the objective of the podcast is to help us reconnect with an evolutionary understanding of our place on the planet and to also think about big world changes right now and the idea that we don't change the world around us by criticizing the old models that don't work anymore, but by creating new ones that kind of make old things that no longer work obsolete. So I'm very excited today because we have Jeff Moyer here on the podcast. He's the executive director of the Rodale Institute. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Tomas. Nice to be with you today.
Thanks for coming in. So I'm really excited about the several topics we're going to cover today. It seems to me that the world's come a long way. Organic is bigger than ever. The lifestyles of health and sustainability market has grown considerably over the past 20 years, I would say. But I feel that organic can be misused, or organic is not enough, or how it is managed, and in a way the Masters of Regeneration podcast wants to address this idea that we are at a moment on Earth where we're changing our mindset in terms of our relationship with the environment. So we're no longer thinking about separated parts of life, but in terms of living systems. And so, but before we jump right into organic regenerative certification and no-till and all the interesting stuff, I'd love to hear more about you a little bit. You used to have a farm, or you were a farmer at some point?
Well, yeah. I mean, I grew up on a very small farm. We mostly it was large gardens. We raised our own food. I wouldn't say my father was a back to the lander because he was premature for that, but really interested in that kind of lifestyle. So I grew up, raising big gardens, chickens, ducks, goats, that kind of thing, and but we had a lot of woodland on our farm. So I went into forestry. When I got out of high school, went to forestry school, wanted to work, sort of, how that is. You picture yourself at 18 being a forest ranger at Yosemite and whatever else might happen. But that didn't work out, and ended up getting into agriculture as a full-time career. And so I've been at Rodale for 42 years. In the process, I also, my wife and I had a small farm that we still live on it, so we're still there. We used to have it was a cow-calf operation, a little bit of beef, big garden. We always had a couple of chickens and different things. Good place to raise kids. Two of everything: 2 dogs, 2 cats, 2 horses, that kind of a place. Yeah. Now my son has grown that farm into a for-profit dairy. We never had dairy growing up, but now it's a dairy farm, and the farm that I live on, we now raise the heifers for the dairy farm. So yeah, live on a farm, work on a farm. It's all certified organic and has been for a long time.
Did your father inspire you in many ways, or through his teachings, or was there anything special that?
My father was not an organically minded person. That really wasn't on his radar screen. It was more about we had a big family. There was 5 of us, we had to feed ourselves. So it was more about that than anything else. I would say, of course, like many people, you're always inspired by your parents, and you see good and bad in their lives. But I think he was very much of a handy person. So whenever something broke, we didn't pick up the telephone, we picked up a toolbox. And I still live by that model. Whenever I go anywhere, it's like, ooh, I could build that, I could make that. So I enjoy that kind of self-sufficiency.
Yeah. But you did grow up connected to nature and yes, the whole farm. Yeah,
very much.
So there's a story I'd like to share before I ask you the next question. And it was, I was in LA at the end of last year, and I visited a biodynamic farm.
Okay.
And we're walking through the farm, and then the my guide shows me across the fence, and he says, "You see that dry land over there with those white things?" And he's like, "That's an organic berry farm." And so we were standing here in this lush, super green biodynamic farm in the middle of the drought, the California drought, just an hour north of LA. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. And he's like, yeah, they just lease the land and they grow their product, their organic berry farm that we all go to Whole Foods and buy our $6 pint, of raspberries that say organic, and we think we're making a good choice for ourselves and for the planet. But I think we're at a time I wanna feel, and I hope I can inspire people through all these conversations to become more intimate with the origin of our food and the choices that we make and the stuff that we buy, because that's to me that example was still kind of like managing a factory. It's a living factory, but it's still just thinking about a product and not thinking about managing an ecosystem. And then I found out that you guys were launching the organic regenerative certification. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And what's the difference between organic and organic regenerative?
Sure, I'd be thrilled to do that.
Cool.
Before I tell you what it is, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of how we got here and why it's really important for us to think in these terms. You have to go way back to 1942 to the founder of the Rodale Institute when J.I. Rodale said he wanted to look at a different way of managing our food production system. And he said he wasn't a farmer. He was a businessman, made his money in electrical switchgears. The company that he created still exists, Lutron Electric, still there, still doing that. But he bought a farm, and he said, if we're trying to farm, his idea was we were going to farm for human health. So the goal of a farmer should be to produce healthy people. It's not to produce food. It's not even to manage the soil or take care of animals. It's to produce healthy people. Now, the tools that we use are soil and animals and those components that turn into food. But the real goal has to be to produce healthy people. And so in 1942, he wrote some words on a blackboard. He said, healthy soil equals healthy food equals healthy people. Mm-hmm. And farmers need to focus their energy on healthy soil. So if that's the case, he said, then, now we didn't have Roundup back then, but if we did, he would have said, does spraying Roundup make people healthy? Well, no. I mean, not even the producers of it would say that the goal of spraying Roundup is to make people healthy. And he would say then we shouldn't use it. That's not a tool we should use, because we should only use those tools that improve the health of the soil and make us healthy as people. Mm-hmm. Jump forward a little bit further in history, back into the late 1970s. His son, Robert Rodale, took over the organization. He was a world traveler. At that time, the concept of sustainable and sustainability was really taking shape. And those are words that he didn't like, because he said you can sustain a bad system with enough inputs. Some farmers say, well, I want to sustain what I have, because I'm making money at it and I like it. Even though I'm destroying the soil, destroying the environment, I'm happy with it, so I want to sustain it.
This is 1972?
Yes.
And we're still using the word sustainable.
Still talking about it. Yeah. He looked at what was happening in East Africa, and you talk to subsistence farmers and you say, you want to be sustainable? And they go, no, I don't want to sustain this. I want to get better. And so he started looking for words that made more sense and sort of explained in one word what he was trying to accomplish, and he came up with the word regeneration. He said, what we really want to do is we want to regenerate the resources. If we follow organic principles to their logical conclusion, then he said, if we manage the soil for soil health, it actually improves over time. It doesn't wear out. It doesn't get used up. The conventional industrial model says soil is a resource, we use it, and then we pump nutrients into it, and then we just cycle things through. And he said, yeah, that doesn't make sense. He was an avid bicycle rider. He created a velodrome. He was in the Olympics in 1968. He saw what was happening with bicycle riding in China, and he said, bicycles are great. And so he built a velodrome to train the Olympic bike team and puts resources into that. But he would say to me, when I ride my bicycle, the only thing that wears out is the bicycle. I actually get healthier. I improve because I'm a system of biology. If we take that same idea and place it on the land, And he said, if we use the land properly and exercise it, it's actually going to produce food and it's going to get healthier while it does that. So it's not going to wear out, it's going to improve. So it's a whole different concept of looking at soil and its relationship to the environment and human health. And so he liked this word regeneration. And so we've always talked about regenerative organic agriculture here at the Institute. But we've noticed that over the last few years, the marketplace has grown weary and tired of the word sustainable. And everybody in the food system is moving away from sustainability, and they wanted to pick up on the word regeneration. And we said, wait a minute, when it pertains to food, that's a Rodale word. We want to claim some territory there, and we want to link it to organic, because from our perspective, you can't have a regenerative food production system without at least first being organic. That's like the basement. That's where we stop. I mean, start, not where we stop. Unfortunately,
just a quick parenthesis for listeners who might not know the precise definitions of what is organic or not.
Okay. Well, in order to be organic in the United States, you have to follow the regulations set up by both the Organic Food Production Act of 1990, OFPA, which was Congress passed the law, and then the USDA set the regulations in partnership with the NOSB, the National Organic Standards Board. And there is a set of regulations. And if you want to use the word organic as it pertains to food or fiber production in the United States, you must adhere to the USDA standard. The problem that we had with creating the USDA standard was in order to give something away, you usually lose control. Bob Rodale was very adamant about wanting organic to grow and grow more rapidly, and so he wanted the U.S. government to take it on as a production standard. But in order to do that, you give things up. And one of the things we gave up with this was the concept of continuous improvement.
Okay.
By doing that, we've created a standard within the USDA that is relatively undynamic. It's flat. It just sits there. It's a baseline, and once you're over that baseline, there's no incentive to improve.
So it's just the standard is no Roundup, no pesticides, no.
Well, it's much more complicated than that, but yes, that's true. No synthetic pesticides and fertilizers. There is a list of some synthetic materials that are allowed in food production. It's a very small list compared to what's used in conventional agriculture. So we know that it's much better than conventional agriculture. It has a goal in theory of improving soil health, but it doesn't talk about it very much in the regulation. It has a goal of maintaining animal welfare, but it doesn't talk about it very much. It has a goal of improving farmers' lives, but it really doesn't talk about that. And there's no standard that you have to adhere to. And so it becomes a list of practices that you can't do more than a list of things that you should do.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, and what we wanted to do was we wanted to link regenerative to that and create a list, a positive step that farmers can take, consumers can support to move people on the planet in the direction that we want it to go. We want people to get healthier. We want the planet to get healthier. And we think that organic, if it's done right, can do that. Now, there's several ways you can build a standard, in our opinion, and that we looked at. You can build a standard based on principles. And biodynamic is a good example of that. There's a lot of principles that are involved in biodynamic, but it makes the number of farmers who will gravitate towards that relatively small, because people have different principles and concepts, and you say, well, here's the principles you have to adhere to, and they go, yeah, that doesn't feel good to me. And so we haven't seen biodynamic grow very rapidly in this country. In Germany, it's fairly large, but the rest of the world really hasn't moved.
Well, it's a little, complicated and expensive, and
it's complicated. It's expensive. It has a very small list of a group of supporters in the marketplace, and so it's still there. It's dynamic, it's aspirational, and there's nothing, we're not saying anything's wrong with it. It just doesn't fit for everybody.
Yeah.
And then if you look at another way you can create a standard, you can create a standard based on testing. And you can say, okay, we're going to test your product to make sure you're adhering to the standard. The problem with a standard based on testing is it encourages cheating. Because everybody knows that if there's a test, then the goal is just to pass the test, not to really accomplish the goal. So there's many ways you can cheat tests, and that's true whether it's a test that you're taking in a learning opportunity. It's whether it's a test you can cheat. We see people cheat on urine tests all the time or blood tests. I mean, there's many ways you can cheat testing. So we did not want a standard that was based on testing. And then you can base the standard on practices, and that's what we chose to do. Because we know that when you base a standard on practices, it's very open. Everybody can get in as long as you adhere to the practices. It's not about where you are on the spectrum of regenerative organic. It's that you're on the path, moving in the right direction, and we can all support that. Mm-hmm. If it's based on practice, an example would be we all know that smoking is not healthy for the human body. So if you stop smoking, we know you're going to get healthier. I may have stopped 2 years ago. You may stop today, or the other way around. So are you more healthy than me? It doesn't really matter. We're on the right path. We both stop smoking, and we're going to be getting healthier. And we know that, and science can prove that. And so we have a lot of agricultural science that showcases that if we follow certain practices, we're going to improve the health of the soil. We're going to improve the animals that live in that environment. We're going to improve the environment, and we're going to improve human health. So let's just get on board and follow those practices. And so we created a standard based on practices that encompass 3 pillars in addition to the organic standard, and that is soil health is one of them. So we have a very practice-based system that you would have to adhere to become regenerative organic that focuses on the concept of healthy soil. So you can't be a bad organic farmer. You've got to be a good organic farmer moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
And that's important to us. We also have very strong animal welfare standards. We did not go out and write animal welfare standards because there's been a lot of well-vetted language out there that we knew we could incorporate. And many organic farmers already are animal welfare approved or some other standard approved. And so one farmer told us, he said, I feel like a Boy Scout with a sash full of merit badges because I'm animal welfare approved, I'm certified organic, I'm kosher, I'm halal, I'm all these things. Couldn't I just have one seal that says I do it all and everything I do is good for the customer, good for the environment, good for health, those sorts of things. And so we tried to roll all that up into one. And then we also include a standard on fair labor practices, because we know that when consumers are coming to the marketplace with their values, one of those values that they look for is fair labor standards, because they don't want to buy an organic product that was produced in Somalia, where the labor was child labor, that where girls were forbidden to go to school because they had to work in the field. That's not what they want to support when they're buying that product. And we think it's only fair that everybody in the market chain benefit from the value and the values that consumers bring to the marketplace, whether it's in the U.S., in Europe, in Asia, or in South America. Everybody should benefit that's involved in that whole production process. The animals should be treated fairly, humans should be treated fairly, and the soil should be improved while we use it. That's what our standard is based on, and we think that people can get behind that. They are getting behind it. It's being very well supported in the organic community, even in the conventional community, when people are saying, yes, finally, this sounds like organic that I could get behind, and that really makes a difference, and I could work on. So we're excited about it.
Right on. So it seems to me that there's 2 mindsets. There's one mindset where I'm exploiting the soil, creating my product, growing it, and at the end of the year, or at the end of the harvest, the soil just keeps on getting more and more depleted. And then there's the other one where it's like I'm managing an ecosystem, and my soil is going to be richer and richer year in and year out. How does that happen?
Well, I don't think any farmer in America or anywhere in the world gets up in the morning and says, my goal is to deplete or degrade my soil.
Yeah.
That's not what farmers do. Unfortunately, consumers have pushed farmers into a position where the only thing they can focus on is yield. When yield is the only criteria by which we judge success, then as a society we lose. And that's unfortunate, because you don't regard the soil as important, or the water that flows through it, or the plants or that grow on it, or the life in the soil that lives there. because you can't focus on that because you're being rewarded in the marketplace for the largest quantity of material, a commodity that you produce at the cheapest price you can produce it.
Yeah.
And so farmers have been pushed in that direction. Now what we're doing is we're saying as a society, really, we want to step back, revisit this picture and say, how can we produce all the food and fiber we need? Because we're not suggesting we starve people. We're saying, how can we produce all the food and fiber we need and at the same time improve the resources that we use that produce it? Oh, that's a different question. Now you've stimulated farmers' creativity, their ingenuity, their innovativeness to say, oh, well, I could do this and I could do that. And if that's one of my goals, and now I'm being challenged to include that as one of my goals, that's a whole new paradigm. And it's going to take time for people to get on board. But I think that farmers that we've spoken to are really energized by that concept of how can we tap into their individual creativity to improve the health of the soil. Now, you ask how we do that. Well, we do it by superimposing practices on the soil that we know are going to be beneficial. For example, we take all the chemicals out of the system. We say because chemicals don't improve life in the soil, they kill life in the soil. Nobody sprays Roundup to kill all the bacteria in the soil, but that's what happens. We're spraying it to kill weeds, and we're not saying farmers have to make their life harder, but unfortunately they're going to have to change their practices because now they're going to cultivate for weed control. They're going to grow cover crops so that when the soil, you look at a cornfield in Iowa today, a typical conventional cornfield, it was just planted in the last few weeks. The corn is very small, so it's not a lot of root structure, not a lot of plant growth. It's going to grow like crazy because it's a fast-growing grass, warm season grass. And then by September, it's going to start to die off again. So the roots are dying, the top's dying. And so all that life in the soil that depends on green living roots only gets it for about 3 months out of the year. Well, it has to die. The microbial life in the soil fluctuates up and down, and as it goes through its rapid life cycle, expansion and contraction. That's not healthy. So what we're saying is as soon as you harvest one crop, plant another one. Even if you're not going to harvest it, plant a cover crop. Yeah. Unfortunately, in the conventional system, because they use pesticides, herbicides to kill cover crops, what they do is the standard USDA practice is kill the cover crop as early in spring as you possibly can. That sort of defeats the purpose. So in our standard, we say let the cover crop grow to maturity and then use mechanical tools to kill the cover crop, like a roller crimper. So we're designing systems here at Rodale, designing tools that facilitate what we know is good practices that improve the health of the soil. And what we're seeing is when farmers improve the health of their soil, the soil actually grows the crop, not the farmer. The farmer's job is to manage the resources in a way that allows the soil to do what it wants to do anyway, which is grow something. And it gets easier with each year we do it.
And the richer the soil, the healthier everything, the nutrient density of the crops and so on. I mean,
we only exist on this planet because we have 6 inches of topsoil and it rains. If we don't have soil and we don't have rain, we don't live. So all the life in the sea depends on nutrients that come out of the soil. So we need the soil. We have to keep rebuilding the soil. We obviously have to use the soil to produce crops. So we're not suggesting that we turn the East Coast back into a hardwood forest and that we train the plains back into high grass prairie and throw some buffalo out there.
Yeah.
That's not what we're suggesting. So we are suggesting that at higher levels of management, more intuitive management, working with biology instead of just chemistry, we can produce the kind of food production system that is regenerative, improves with time, and can sustain and feed a population on this planet for thousands of years, not just 150 years, like some people say we're doomed to failure at.
Yeah.
That's scary because whether Elon Musk is successful in sending spaceships into space and we find a planet to colonize.
Well, yeah. What about us? What about life?
They're not going to take 7 billion people with them.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that maybe Tomas and Jeff aren't on the list. We're not going to go. So we have to make our home here, and we have to make it better so we can have it for multiple generations.
I absolutely agree. Yeah. I mean, I've spoken to several indigenous people in the Amazon and other places around the planet, and their work every day is to maintain life as healthy as possible. Their health the ecosystem's health with the different seasons. There are seasons in the Amazon, who would have known? But and they follow that ecological calendar, they call it. So, and a roller, just to go back to what you were saying, a rolling crimper is a device to be able to take the cover crops without disturbing the soil, if I'm correct, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we know that organic farmers continuously talk about improving soil health. But oftentimes, because we have to manage weeds and we don't use chemicals, we do use some tillage to help us maintain clean seed beds and get our crops established. It doesn't take much imagination to put yourself in the place of a earthworm on tillage day and recognize that that is not a good day. Suddenly, your whole world literally turned upside down.
Yeah.
Uh, so we want to minimize that. We're not saying we can eliminate it in organic systems, but we can minimize it. And tillage is an activity that nature understands and knows how to recover from quickly.
Okay.
Nature doesn't understand how to recover from heavy doses of pesticides. There is no mechanism to recover from that. Tillage happens every time a raindrop hits bare soil. There's a minor tillage event that takes place. And so nature understands that and can recover from that quickly. As farm managers, it's incumbent upon us to give nature the tools that it needs to recover as quickly as possible. So when we do tillage, we like to plant cover crops. Cover crops don't require any secondary tillages, so we don't cultivate them. We broadcast them on the field, we drill them on the field, we get them out there very quickly, and they germinate and grow rapidly, so there's instantly green roots and green cover back on that field literally within days. It's our way of apologizing to the soil for the disturbance that we did. Once we have cover crops in place, our goal then as organic farmers should not be to come back and till them under. And so here at Rodale Institute, we said, okay, well, how do we do that? What do we do? And so we developed a system of organic no-till that lets us take advantage of all the modern technology that agricultural engineers have developed for getting seeds and transplants into the soil without tillage.
Yeah.
As organic farmers, we should take advantage of that because going back to the earlier part of our conversation, if it doesn't negatively impact human health or environmental health, why wouldn't we use it? We're not anti-technology, so we're happy
Absolutely. Yeah.
with robotics and satellite-guided tractors and any kind of technology we come up with, as long as it doesn't negatively impact human health or environmental health. And so we say we can take advantage of modern no-till planter and transplanter technology if we can manage the weeds. And so we developed here a simple tool. It's called a roller crimper that terminates cover crops when they're sexually mature, just basically just rolls them, crimps them, leaves them on the surface. So if any of your listeners have a garden where you put mulch on the garden, that's what we're doing on a farm scale. It's just that we can't go out and mulch 1,000 acres because it just would take, you'd have to grow it one place,
Yeah.
transport it over. It would take a tremendous amount of labor and energy, and nobody wants to pay for that when you purchase your food products or fiber products. So what we're saying, if we could grow the cover crop right in the field, never have to move it, never have to do anything with it, and then still be able to no-till into it and have no other further activities on the soil disturbance or chemicals, we can do that. And we've developed those systems. So one thing, it points to a tool that really works. The second thing is it encourages people to say, what other tools could we develop if we shifted our mindset and our energy from trying to produce tools like chemicals or other tools that really fight with nature versus tools that work with nature, I think we would all benefit. And biology will be our friend and work with us and help us to produce all the food that we need to feed a growing population. We're not
Beautiful.
suggesting that
Yeah.
anybody starve or have less food.
No.
We already produce enough food on this planet, more than enough.
Yeah.
And we can do that organically. We can basically have our cake and eat it too. We just have to do it in a different way and impose different tools and
What?
value those different concepts.
Sure. Because one of the big arguments is, we won't be able to, for the farmer, so many farmers who I've met who say, well, yeah, but it's not profitable.
It,
Are you get my question is, my point is, do you guys provide any training to farmers, or what can people do if, say, someone who's a farmer that ends up listening to this podcast, what are the resources they can check out to
sure.
go in the right direction, in this right direction, let's say.
Well, I think farmers are just like anybody else, or any other population group that you might dynamics you might want to examine. There are early adopters who look at technology
Yeah.
and say, "Ooh, that's what I want to do. I can make that work." They grab hold of it and they move it forward. Then there's kind of this mass in the middle that needs to move, and that's kind of where we are today. They're looking at those early adopters and saying, "Oh, well, they're successful." But they always are the early adopters, or they're always successful. And I have limitations for whatever reason they might come up with,
Hmm.
or in some cases, it's an excuse to not have to move. And then what we've done is we've created these uh, political policy crutches that enable farmers to sustain a practice that it would ordinarily not be sustainable. Crop insurance is a good example. We as a society have said, at least in the United States, that we're going to subsidize crop insurance because farmers couldn't afford it on their own. Although nobody subsidizes my car insurance or my homeowner's insurance, it's based on whether I have a risky behavior or not. Uh, so farmers enter into what we know is risky behavior because it's based on chemicals, and then we subsidize that risk with crop insurance. So
Yeah.
we enable them to continue the practice.
Yeah.
And then, so that's kind of in the middle. And then there's this group at the end that will never adopt new principles. They're just stuck where they are. They're not going to move. And we recognize that. And the only thing that's going to change that is time, because nobody lives forever. And so farm transitions will take place over time. We also know that in agriculture, we're at a little bit of a disadvantage for adopting new practices in that our farm population is older than most populations in other industries. Most industries have a small population at the top, a large population in the middle, and new people coming in all the time. Uh, we have 6 times as many farmers in this country over the age of 65 as we have under the age of 35.
Wow.
That's scary. That's scary for any industry. If you're in the auto industry and all your workforce is older than younger, you're in danger. If you're running a church, it's a problem if everybody's old and nobody young coming in. So we see that as a problem. Part of the problem is we've made agriculture either financially impossible for people to get in, or so uninteresting that people don't want to get in.
Yeah.
Organic is allowing people, and regenerative organic is really creating a microcosm of industry that people want to get involved in. Young people are saying, yes, this really fits with the values that I bring to my life and my lifestyle, and that's what I want to do. So we're seeing a lot of farmers transition there. We're also seeing farmers who unfortunately are struggling to make money in a commodity world where the commodity values are very depressed. And that's just the sad case of agriculture in general right now, is commodity prices, whether you're dairy, beef, or grain crops, or cotton, I don't care what it is, the commodity prices are depressed, along with lumber, coal, oil, everything, all commodities are depressed. And so if you're growing for a commodity market, the future doesn't look real bright. And so those farmers who are slightly progressive are looking at an opportunity to change and saying, I need to do something different if I want to bring a next generation on board, if I want somebody to make my farm even look better when I sell it. It has to be a profitable enterprise. Can organic help me do that? People are looking at that. And then when we bring regenerative organic to the table, they go, great. This really positions me for the future, not the current status, not the past, but positions me for the future, because we really believe that it should be done, because organic is the future. It is where we are going, and we'll get there. And this is just setting the stage for that.
Beautiful. Yeah, it really illustrates this idea of the change of mindset from a sort of linear relationship to the environment to a more cyclical understanding of how nature actually works. And it's just
Right.
good for all of us.
But
Um,
if we try to sell it on its ability to improve nature and the environment, we turn people off, because that sort of gets into philosophy.
yeah,
But if we say, look, it's all about what the marketplace wants, and they're going to reward us for that,
that's
what
good.
happens is we improve water, we improve the biodiversity of the system, we improve nature, and that just comes along for the ride when we try to do other things right.
Yeah,
And if we can do that in a profitable scenario, we think it's going to get legs and run.
beautiful. And you're keeping not only yourself healthy, but also your children, and
Exactly.
awesome. Um, so whether I'm a farmer or I have a garden in my backyard or I'm a consumer, where do I go? Where can I find out more about the organic regenerative certification, or how can I educate myself a little more about this?
Great question. The first stop should be the Regenerative Organic Alliance. It's a website that you can go to and you can look at the standard that we have. You can look at the partners we're working with, look at the board of directors. I'm on the board there. Flordale has a permanent position on the board as chair of that board because it's really based on the concepts we're working on here and have been for decades. So yeah, go there and study that, look at it, and see if it makes sense. We don't have product on the market shelf yet because we are in a pilot phase study part of the program. We created a standard. We basically build a boat. Now we want to see if it floats. Where does it float? What waters does it struggle in? Can it float in the ocean? Can it float in a pond or in a river or a stream? How does it work? Because we want a standard that can unify farmers globally. It is an international standard. It's not just a national standard. And we want a standard that works for the person with a quarter-acre farm or a greenhouse and somebody that's farming 30,000 hectares. You know, we want to be able to cover all of that within our standard. We want it to work for cotton and fiber production. We want it to work with palm oil for soap. We want it to work with tomatoes and dairy cows and beef cattle and chickens. So it has to work for everybody. And that takes a little bit of time to run it through some models. So we're doing that right now. I think we have 22 farms that we're running the standard through as a pilot phase with the goal of having product on the shelf within a year. And it's going to take time for consumers to understand the difference between organic and regenerative organic. We're not bad-mouthing organic. We fully support organic. It's been our word from the beginning. And we think it's light years ahead of where conventional is. But in order to be a real leader, we have to get out in front of the curve and show even organic farmers where the future is. And that's what we're trying to do, is create a high bar standard that is also dynamic and has the concept of continuous improvement. So we know that once you are a regenerative organic farmer, you're going to continuously track your farm and improve it year after year after year. And that really should be the goal of all of us as people, all of us in industry. I want to be a better person today than I was yesterday. We're all
Absolutely,
a project in process. That should be our goal for our farms as well.
And I would imagine it's also sorry.
No.
I would imagine it's also a very specific case by case kind of work, kind of undertaking, right? Because every soil, every climate, every ecosystem is completely different, and farmers will have to work with the specificities of that place, of the land.
Absolutely, and that's why we tried not to be too prescriptive with the standard. We tried to set goals for what the standard is trying to accomplish and a direction that we're trying to move. And we know that, I mean, if we're all heading to Seattle, some people can run faster than me. Some people can't run at all. But if we all agree that we want to go to Seattle, let's all get on board and start moving in that direction, and we'll get there. Everybody will get there at a different pace, and that's okay as long as we agree on a path forward. And that's what we're trying to do, is set a path with this standard, say, here's where we need to be. Here's a standard and a path that gets us there. It's dynamic. So if somebody comes up with tools or solutions or technologies that seem to be beneficial, we can incorporate them into this standard without going through the heavy lifting process of the federal government. And so we wanted to keep it in private hands, but a partnership with the federal government. So they still control organic, and we're happy about that. We think it's a great partnership between private industry, farmers, consumers, and the federal government, all agreeing that this is the direction we want to move, and we're going to support it in the marketplace. We're going to have rules that are at the governmental level. We're going to have private standards. I think that is really the partnership that we've been waiting for as a universe, as a planet, to help us go in the right direction. So we're excited about being able to be part of it.
Absolutely. That sounds amazing, Jeff. I'm really excited to hear all this, and very hopeful that many of us are sort of, getting informed at least and making better choices. And for me as a consumer, I truly believe that, because we're all consuming, I mean, we're all eating. There's many of us eating.
If people are listening, they have been eating, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And so, is there anything you'd like to say for consumers, farmers, or anyone else in the audience that I haven't asked you about?
Well, I think just building on what you said, I mean, we all eat, we all touch food, we all touch farmers, we all touch the soil 3 or 4 times a day. We just don't realize it. And if people can sort of think downstream or upstream from, sure, where you look at it, from where they are at their purchasing and consuming position, and how those choices that they make with their food dollars impact the very people who live on the land. Farmers farm the land, whether they're conventional, organic, or regenerative organic, because they love what they do. They love being part of this process and wouldn't have it any other way. And we want to encourage them to be successful and to move in a positive direction. And we can't do it without consumers making those choices. So consumers really are in the driver's seat. It's not farmers. For too long, we've left farmers being in the driver's seat, and now we have to build these relationships and these partnerships, make them strong, educate ourselves about the importance of those decisions, and then make them together so we can improve the planet. And our personal health. We have to do it. It's not an option.
Yeah, it's definitely not an option.
It's not an option.
Well, I look forward to checking out the Regenerative Organic Alliance
Please.
and reading more about it, and I'll be in touch. I'll keep, I'll keep following you guys' work, and thank you so much, Jeff, for coming into the podcast.
It was my pleasure to be here to talk to you, to talk to your audience. If I can ever be of any other help, the Rodale Institute is a 501c nonprofit, C3 nonprofit. We exist because of the philanthropy and support of people out there.
Awesome.
So please support us. You can join the Organic Farmers Association. That's a new association that we helped start. If that's beneficial, so you can listen to the conversation that farmers are having, even though you're not a farmer, be a supporting member, join up, and help us make the right decisions. That's what we need.
Beautiful, beautiful. Is there anything else I can do as a consumer? Can I join, or can I? I mean, I can support the Rodale Institute as a member with donations and all that stuff. But is there any other way I can get involved as a consumer?
Well, I would say go to our website. There's a lot of opportunities for consumers to get involved. Yes, supporting us is always wonderful. And as an executive director talking to my development team, I'd be amiss if I hadn't said that.
Yeah.
But also even joining the Organic Farmers Association, which is a project within us where the money goes to support organic farmers directly. People can support that. But on our website, educate yourself, look at what we're doing, create educational opportunities within your community so others can learn what you're learning. I think we all have to work together, and we all have a role to play. And of course, buy organic food for now, because you can't buy a regenerative organic, but buy organic food
Soon.
and support those farmers that are making the wise decisions and working hard to keep us all healthy.
Awesome. Jeff, this was amazing. I'm really excited to have had this conversation. Yeah.
I was happy to have it as well. I wish all of you and your listeners the very best.
All right. Bye, Jeff. Have a good
Thank
one.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. This was awesome.
Great.
I'll cut the at the last part where we said goodbye. Well, very exciting stuff, Jeff. I'm really excited.
Well,
I was just reading The Third Plate and by Dan Barber. Have you read it?
I have not.
Really beautiful when he tells the whole story of rediscovering and re-understanding nature and the language of the farm and weeds and the soil and all that. It's good times.
It is. I mean, it's an exciting time to be a farmer. It's an exciting time to be involved in agriculture. Change is always scary. The future is bright, but it's not always visible. And I think 10 years from now we're going to be in a much better place than we are today. I have to believe that.
Totally.
I think I think people who listen to your podcast who relate to the conversations you're having are the key to success. So we really need these partnerships and relationships. Yeah. So I'm pleased to be here with you.
Yeah, I do think that this big revolution is just going to happen through being in concert with nature, with biology, rather than that old paradigm where we try to impose our culture onto nature, which is kind of we live and learn kind of thing, anyway.
For thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, we were able to push against nature, and nature always pushed back and won. Now we have the technology that we can win, and that's scary. So we have to stop pushing so hard. And finding that balance is just part of human exploration of the planet. And I think we've bumped up against the point where we said we push too hard,
Yeah.
and we have to back up. And how we back up and how we find a path forward that is in partnership with nature is what we have to do. Stop pushing against it. Stop letting it push us. Work in partnership, and we can survive as a species indefinitely. I mean, that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Awesome. Well,
Great.
I'll say thank you again, and I'll let you go. I'm sure you have plenty of stuff to do.
I do, and it was my pleasure to be with you. And
thank you so much for also staying. I know, Zoe had said you had 30 minutes, and it's been almost an hour.
Well, you can see how well I pay attention to my watch. It's not much.
All right.
Interesting conversation.
Sweet. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Super. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was another fascinating conversation with Jeff Moyer, Executive Director at the Rodale Institute. In partnership with nature, I can work with that. We are a small team doing research, creative direction, editing, recording, and working on getting you this inspiring knowledge in various formats. We need your support to keep producing the podcast and manage our community both online and offline. We'll be releasing a new episode every 2 weeks, so I invite you to have a listen on iTunes, give us 5 stars and an awesome review. Check out our Kickstarter campaign. Go to our website, mastersofregeneration.com, and please share the campaign with your networks. You can also always reach out to me directly at tomas@mastersofregeneration.com. That's TOMAS at mastersofregeneration.com. And remember, we are the land is us. That's not poetry, that's biology. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.